Spy Family, an enormously popular series that's managed to accomplish a difficult task, essentially appeal to anime fans as well as the mainstream audience. Among all of the characters present, one small girl is easily the most popular of the cast. It wouldn't be until a few volumes into the series that fans would learn the origins of Anya Forger. More specifically, a certain woman acted as the blueprint for success. Ashe of Purgatory, or Rengoku no Ashe if you prefer, is a one-shot that lands roughly in the middle of Tatsuya Endo's body of work. Published to Jump Square in 2014, the story came about after having another idea of his turned down by the magazine. Joined by a group of other talented authors, Endo presented a dark fantasy tale to the readers of the publication. It seems the reception wasn't especially strong, with the one-shot not receiving a lot of feedback at the time. Going forward, Ashe's design was repurposed for Anya out of preference, with even the young girl's name being a result of merging characters from other series. While most of these elements went to her, the earrings ended up being transferred to Yor as another homage. I was surprised to see that no one had really gone in depth with the story, especially given how popular Endo's gotten recently. I'd like to take this opportunity to cover it, because not only is the one-shot worth reading, but Ashe is also a great character in her own right. Serving under a group that aims to protect the less fortunate, we're introduced to Belle Tainburin, one of the main characters of the story. While it's seemingly honorable work, a lot of people consider them to be an unsightly nuisance. Regardless of this attitude, Belle manages to stay positive, glad to have a job that keeps him afloat. Noting the presence of various soldiers in town, the man isn't surprised by the newest wave of witch hunts taking place. Being a regular occurrence, the citizens are forced to suspect everyone, breeding a culture of distrust. Interrupting his thoughts, Belle hears a commotion coming from a nearby alley. Currently being extorted by the church for money, the second main character Ashe Talton is in a bit of a bind. The religious faction is held in high regard, with certain members naturally taking advantage of this position. Getting pushed into a torch, the girl's hair catches on fire. Dashing forward with his sword, Belle manages to prevent further damage from being done. Unfortunately, the airborne flame passes over to him, burning his arm after the rescue. Quickly putting it out, the monk goes on to intimidate the would-be attackers, watching them flee shortly after. With the conflict resolved, the man is met with cold appreciation, assuming the woman doesn't want to associate with the group he's a part of. However, as Ashe looks back at the injury Belle received from getting involved, she takes responsibility, stopping the man before he leaves. Being brought to a clinic, the knight is introduced to Johan, the main doctor of the place. Having the situation explained, the older man reveals just how talented Ashe is when it comes to her medical aptitude. With her reputation stealing business from the church, harassment from their members has become more common as of late. Told to return for more treatment the next day, Belle is worried that his presence will cause problems for the clinic. Surprisingly, Ashe doesn't seem to mind, not concerned with the public's view. Properly introducing himself before he goes, Belle heads back to work, glad to have come across such an interesting person. The next day, the man attempts to do a bit of shopping, but is met with suspicion thanks to his uniform. Offering to buy out the merchant's stock, Ashe makes another appearance, receiving a completely different reaction from the shop owner. Walking through town together, the pair is met with discriminatory looks, but the woman again states that it isn't a problem. Running into some kids that are familiar with Ashe, Belle witnesses another example of her kindness. Hearing the children's nickname for her, the monk uses it for himself, not expecting the reaction it would give him. Going forward a bit, Belle again visits the clinic, helping Ashe gather a variety of herbs and flowers. Mentioning a certain festival tradition, the woman gets a wistful look, recalling events from her past. Doing his best to cheer her up, the man adorns her head with a small decoration. These peaceful moments have been a welcome reprieve, but the night comes to remind them of the brutal world they live in. Later, the town gathers to watch the usual grim display of witch hunting, putting an innocent person on trial for their supposed wrongdoing. As Belle's group has been hired as guards for the event, the man has a front row seat to the injustice being committed. Examinations never take long, as the bishop's greed guarantees a 100% conviction rate. Lowering the accused into a pit of fire, the supposed witch is purged for the crowd's amusement. Not satisfied with the meager earnings stolen from the deceased, the bishop is ready to eliminate more evil to efficiently line his pockets. The following morning, Bell returns to the clinic, overhearing others talk about the execution. Mentioning his past as an orphan, the man states that his physical prowess is all he has, assuming that prevents him from understanding the complex matter of judging witches. Regardless, the monk still feels that these acts are wrong, unable to shake the prevailing sense of unease. Understanding this pain, Ashe knows how aggravating the symptoms can be. Appreciating the kindness, Bell drops the news that his group is leaving the next day. Wanting to come back in the future, the soldier is hopeful that the nurse won't mind. Met with a bashful response, he knows that they'll see each other again soon enough. Interrupting the duo, guards from the church force their way in, looking to apprehend another victim. Unfortunately, the person in question is Ashe, dragged to the town square for a one-way trip to hell. Putting forth the usual trumped-up charges, the bishop is looking to eliminate his competition in one fell swoop. Bell looks to the crowd for some kind of objection, only to be met with endless hypocrisy from those the clinic had helped previously. Furious at this display, the man tries to defend his friend, only to be restrained for the duration of the trial. Becoming noticeably angered, odd bruises start appearing on Ashe's face. Gradually growing in number, the marks finally erupt from her body with tremendous force. As a number of strange creatures fill the sky, it seems that a real witch has finally been identified. Seeing more than enough evidence for himself, the bishop throws the girl into the pit of fire without hesitation. And just like that, Ashe became ashes. Shortly after, the clinic's head doctor gets killed as well, followed by Bell being publicly recognized as a traitor to the church. Losing what little social standing he had, his job is the next thing to go, leaving the man to fend for himself. As time moves on, karma deals a heavy blow to the city. A wave of sickness claimed countless lives, and thanks to the bishop's endless self-indulgence, the remaining people continue to sell each other out whenever possible. Wandering aimlessly for 3 years, Bell's positive demeanor has crumbled away. Haunted by that fateful day, the broken soldier is overcome with guilt, unfairly blaming himself for what happened. Hearing tales about a so-called genuine witch, the descriptions were similar in nature, but no actual testimony was ever reliable enough to go off of. Wanting the stories to be accurate, Bell holds on to the small hope of learning the truth about that strange night. Recalling a past event, Bell came across a strange medical book while at the clinic. Showcasing a variety of different witch diseases, it seems anyone with these conditions is fated to carry them indefinitely. Being walked in on by Ashe, she seemed less than thrilled with his discovery. Having the book taken away from him, the monk jokingly accused the woman of being the target audience of the information. Met with a fearful look, the words unknowingly hit a little too close to home. Bell tries to rationalize what that could have meant, but knows it isn't worth thinking about anymore. Suddenly, the man's gaze is drawn to the bishop being led through the city, now on the receiving end of the law. Wanting his own revenge, Bell grabs a spear, charging the one responsible for the death of his friend. Being intercepted, the nearby guards put a stop to his attack. Foolishly interrupting the public march, the aggressor now finds himself next in line to be put to death. Brought to trial, the bishop's greed has been fully recognized by the Pope, no longer allowing the holy system to be abused. Claiming these accusations are false, the defendant's argument easily falls apart, with his attire being more than enough to prove otherwise. Grinning menacingly, it seems even the Pope isn't exempt from selfish desires. Left to die a fiery death, the criminal is about to experience the same pain he forced onto everyone else. Desperate to escape, the bishop notices Bell nearby, crying out for his assistance. Staying kneeled on the ground, the former knight is in no state to save anyone. Suddenly, Bell's old injury starts acting up. Before he can think about what might be causing this, the man hears a familiar voice ring out. Recognizing the strange creatures floating through the air, Bell slowly turns his head to make out the face of the owner. Sure enough, Ashe has returned from the dead, watching the trial with a scornful look. Following this appearance, the scene shifts back to that fateful day 3 years ago. Understandably, the collective audience is confused about their surroundings. Breaking the silence, Ashe states that everyone present had been thrust into a powerful premonition. The last 3 years served as a warning, with the outcome of this trial having the potential to spark a wave of disaster. Revealing the disease that rests within her body, Ashe attributes the widespread mirage to the parasites known as Tarantera. Acting in defense of their host, the creatures spread illusions that incite panic, becoming far more violent if they're immensely realism is interrupted. More than used to the fearful expressions all around her, Ashe is willing to deal with it if it ensures her survival. That said, she certainly never expected anyone to react positively after experiencing her powers. As the chain accidentally goes slack, history threatens to repeat itself, but Belle is ready for action this time. Cutting through the cage in spectacular fashion, the man finally manages to save his friend. Despite the damage he took from jumping through the flames, the knight is too happy to care about the pain. Worn out from the release of her sickness, it doesn't take Ashe long before she loses consciousness. Waking up in the clinic, the woman isn't sure if her rescue actually happened. Regardless, Ashe has been in this situation before, knowing that it's time to move on. Unlike those other instances, another person is waiting to see her off. Berating Belle for wanting to come with her, the witch continues to be met with support. Traumatized from her past, the girl knows it's unthinkable to expect sympathy from anyone. Mentioning her tenacity, Belle admires the strength that Ashe continuously displays, taking difficult steps in spite of the hardship she's forced to endure. Using the ability he's proud of, the monk is determined to be someone she can count on. Turning to face the man with tears in her eyes, it seems that Ashe's parasites are getting ready to act in self-defense. However, within moments, a different kind of illusion rains down from above. Showering the area with flowers, the situation is anything but tense. Witnessing the cheerful magic for himself, Belle knows that his companion deserves to be seen for who she really is. Grateful for the kind words, Ashe is happy to have finally found someone she can trust. Heading to the south, the duo start their journey towards hope. While this is the extent of the story, it does a good job establishing the characters in the setting. The witch hunts can only be described as bleak, persecuting innocent people without the public so much as batting an eye. We definitely see that here, with no one questioning a victim's guilt, and everyone perfectly willing to go along with the verdict. Even worse, in an attempt to save themselves, accusations are flung left and right. In a world that thrives on selling others out, it's only natural that a general air of cynicism would be prevalent. Going against this idea, Belle is far more cheerful, earnestly doing his job despite the reputation it carries. Even with the background of being an orphan, he still manages to keep his friendly demeanor intact. However, this all changes during the mass illusion. Viewed as human trash, the exiled man has no joy left after witnessing his friend's unjust murder. Having the reality of his surroundings literally burned into him, the hopelessness completely takes hold. It even gets to the point where he essentially gives up on life, throwing away his future for the chance to kill the bishop. Lost in despair, Belle crumbles under the weight of regret. Still, after finding out that Ashe is alive, he goes back to his regular cheery self. If there ever was an official continuation, it would be interesting to see Belle's personality match someone like Naofumi from Shield Hero. Both start off relatively normal, but become extremely cynical after they get betrayed by the world around them. Naofumi does get friendlier, but he always holds on to those early memories, keeping his guard up against people he doesn't trust. In this light, Belle could remain cordial with Ashe, but more openly doubt others around him. Given how little it takes for someone to get sold out as a witch, it would make complete sense, especially after watching the trials continue for 3 years during the illusion. There's also the fact that Endo wasn't a huge fan of Belle's overly positive demeanor, so there's definitely room here for adjustment. That said, I also don't mind Belle just being a decent person in general. Surrounded by despair, it's refreshing to see someone maintain a smile despite that. Either way, the author would decide the best course to take. Ashe is your typical tsundere, and honestly, I'm fine with that. The occasional moments where she breaks character is a nice touch, and the expressions that come as a result make her even better. With the knowledge that she's a witch, it's interesting watching her early interactions with Belle. Used to being discriminated against, the woman has no issue being around the man that faces the same problem. As for general developments, there's a lot of potential when it comes to the parasites in her body. While their power is stated outright, more abilities could be introduced when they're faced with unique situations. Going further, if the disease progresses, that corruption could add dangerous new mutations to existing symptoms. There's also the trial that gets seen at the very beginning of the one-shot. Ashe has clearly been involved in numerous witch hunts, but to what extent is unknown, giving lots of opportunities for additional backstory. Aside from the main duo, there's plenty of room for new characters, with the obvious choice being the introduction of more witches. They could be saved by the main cast and left in a location location the party might return to later, or decide to join the group's travels of their own volition. There was also mention of medical researchers as part of the main plot. One might accompany them in search of materials for their own use, eventually making developments that could get Ashe closer to being cured. It would also be interesting if one of the necessary items in question was exclusively located inside of a high-security castle. If you wanted to add more tension, there could be soldiers constantly on the group's tail. Some of the members could even be people that Bell used to know, motivated by greed or a personal vendetta against witches. In fact, what if one of the aforementioned medical researchers used their abilities in a sinister way? Maybe they're friendly on the surface, but secretly execute potential witches, performing euthanasia to enact a sick form of justice. What if a high-ranking member of the church was actually a witch? Were they captured against their will, or is it a voluntary position? There's certainly a lot worth exploring, making it a real shame that it was never picked up. Though if Jump didn't want it, I'm sure plenty of other publishers would have been willing to indulge a darker fantasy series. Thankfully, the story eventually managed to make its way into Endo's main serialization on Shonen Jump Plus. Published as a special release in between chapters 31 and 32, a lot of Spy Family readers were introduced to Ashe of Purgatory for the first time. Looking at his overall manga career, Endo has had his share of success, though it also feels like certain entries could easily be expanded on if given the chance. That said, the one-shot I Spy laid the groundwork for what would eventually become Spy Family, so I suppose anything is possible. Either way, Endo has made some great works, and I'm glad he's receiving more recognition. With any luck, we'll see Ashe again someday, smiling brightly for the world to see. Big thanks to my amazing literary club member, El Chuflo.